Mr. Davis. I'd like to call the Marketing Committee meeting here today on Monday, October 22nd at 9 a.m.
Well, good morning. We have a few presentations this morning. First up, let's go ahead and we'll start with Patrick Kelly, the CEO of St. Lawrence County Industrial Development Agency. Patrick.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Morning, Dad.
Nice to be here. My sense is you wanted a brief discussion on the Industrial Development Agency, what we do, how we might work together. This is your marketing committee, so talk a little bit about our marketing activities. The IDA is the primary economic development entity for St. Lawrence County. Our mission is to improve the overall economic condition. We measure ourselves basically through jobs and investment in the tax base. So we undertake a series of activities and initiatives, programs, all designed basically to increase the economic performance of St. Lawrence County. Our broad activities, we act in a number of different manners. We act like a financing institution. We provide loans. We have a set of tax incentives that by New York state law are unique to IDAs. We can provide tax exempt bond financing. You hear the most about that. It's probably one of our larger types of ways of participating in a project. We also can provide mortgage recording tax exemptions. We can provide sales and use tax exemptions. And we can also provide what are called pilots or payment in lieu of tax exemptions on real estate. The way that we typically function, we try to be a gap financer, meaning there's a project, somebody is looking at either expanding or coming to the county, and they have a financing need. They have a certain amount of equity that they're able to put into the project. There's typically a bank involved, not always, but typically, and there's a gap in what it takes to put the project together. We come in, we do an overall packaging. We work with our own programs. We work with the local banks. We work with the communities and the regional funders, and sometimes with New York State, sometimes with the authority, and we try and deliver an incentive proposal or package that enables a project to go forward. We have lower, the value that our financing brings to a project is it's a lower cost. Our interest rates are lower than the banks, and we have a higher risk tolerance. Our funds are revolving loan funds, meaning we loan them out, they get paid back, we loan them out again. If they don't get paid back. Morning, Fred. If they don't get paid back, obviously we can't lend them out again, so we do a certain amount of underwriting and risk analysis before we make a loan. We also function as a bit of a construction entity. The IDA has built 10 buildings in St. Lawrence County, approximately 170,000 square feet of space. The notion is you use the different tools that you have to try and attract companies. Obviously, you guys are very familiar with construction projects, having a Commerce Park right here. We've built primarily in Messina, Potsdam, Canton, and Governor. Obviously, the OBPA has got a full roster of facilities here. We've financed some of those buildings over the years, so we've participated more as a lender or as an investor, so to speak, as opposed to building our own buildings over here. Right now, we have available buildings in Messina, Potsdam, and we're finishing up a building in Canton. So there is a roster of space that's out there. The other way we function is as a technical consultant. We try to be I want my staff to be the interface between the employers of the county and the different service providers that are out there. If a company is functioning, trying to stay in business, trying to expand, trying to survive, they don't necessarily have the time or the resources to understand every different type of assistance that might be out there. I try to have the IDA function as a clearinghouse where when we go in and call on companies, if they say, well, we're struggling with electricity, or we're struggling with financing, or there's a workforce issue, that we can come back to them and say, okay, here's what's out there to help you based on our assessment of what the situation is as you've described it. We can come back, we can either go out and find the right service providers to help you, we can work through the process with you, but bringing the collective programs and services of all of the workforce and economic development entities that function in the area to the companies is something that we try to do. In the course of a year, we will make somewhere near 2,000 customer contacts throughout St. Lawrence County. Typically that's with over 500 separate what I call entities for employers. It could be for-profit companies, it could be non-for-profit companies. We tend to have a fairly sustained program calling on the existing employer base. The last thing that we do is marketing, and it fits in, I think, a little bit with what this group is tasked with. We are the primary economic development marketing entity for the county. I distinguish that from tourism development, which is the County Chamber of Commerce. They do more of the tourism promotion. The notion of marketing this county and this area as a destination for investment and for employers to set up operations is something that falls within the IDA's purview. We typically, we market about we budget about $100,000 a year toward our marketing. A fair amount of it is done in Canada. What we try to do is take the natural strengths, or what we see is as our advantages, our assets, and try and promote them to the areas where we think we have the most likely scenarios for being successful. $100,000 doesn't go far, so you don't want to spend a certain amount of it on a low return or a too risky endeavor, because once it's gone, it's gone. I'll read, I don't want to read too much to you, but from our marketing plan for the year, these are the strengths and the value proposition as we see it, or at least as we saw it at the beginning of 2012. A strategic location with access to U.S., Canadian, and world markets, which I think obviously with the border crossing and your transportation network dovetails well with the OBPA. Power, land, water, and natural resources, available affordable sites and buildings, a productive and capable workforce, educational and technical resources and collaboration opportunities, aggressive tax, training, financial, and energy incentives, air, rail, port, and road transportation systems, and a commitment to assist. So essentially what we try to do is you take what we have. We're a small rural county in northern New York State. We are not what you would consider a top-of-the-list investment destination for most company expansion projects. We're just far enough off the beaten path. We don't have a name brand community that is recognized too far from this region. What we do have, for being a small rural county, we have 5 colleges and universities. We have 2 border crossings. We have vast natural resources, a lot of agricultural resources. There's the mining resources. There's a number of unique aspects to St. Lawrence County. The power allocation that we just received from the Power Authority, which is available countywide. These are different things that we think distinguish us. They're unique to a county like ours, so we try and take that dialogue and either get it in front of prospect companies or get prospect companies down here. We do a comprehensive series of activities throughout the year that are designed to raise our profile and to get us in front of prospective firms for locating here. The last couple weeks we've done 2 events. We did one in Messina last week where we had about 40 Canadian companies. They toured the GM site. There's an article in the Sunday paper. They toured the GM site. We did a luncheon. We hosted a luncheon, gave them 5 or 6 presentations on doing business in St. Lawrence County and in the United States. John attended. John was there. We did one the week before that here in Ogdensburg, same idea, but this one was more focused toward exporting to the United States, trying to drum up some interest. We partnered with the province of Ontario. We had about 30 firms. Fred and John were both there. The idea is, one of the things that we notice is you have to stay in front of the companies. We do mailings throughout the year. We probably attend 14 trade shows over in Canada. We take out advertisements. We're on the internet. There's very similar to the kind of things that I've seen the OBPA do over the years. And the issue is you just got to stay at it. You got to keep in front of them, because what we'll see is we'll see a company. John will have an inquiry from a company, and we'll say, geez, that name looks familiar. And it'll be because we've sent 6 letters to him. And it just so happened that, maybe John's 6th letter was the one that did the trick. It's a timing issue. You got to put your outreach effort in front of them at the time where they're thinking about doing some kind of expansion. And that can be a year or 2 or many before they actually do the expansion. I mean, the process, I think you guys have been at it long enough. It's not an overnight process. So one of the things that people ask us about is all of the marketing that we do in Canada? And the answer is no. most of it is, or primarily it is, and that's for obvious geographic reasons. If you look at St. Lawrence County, our ability to attract a company from the Carolinas or Pennsylvania is fairly limited by just the reality of the geography. If someone wants to be in New York State and they're coming from the south, they gotta go through Binghamton and Portland and Syracuse and Watertown, all before they even get here. So the idea of attracting companies from Canada is a natural fit. There's a long history of doing it. We worked with the OBPA for, since before I was doing this 12 years ago. And that seems to be where we're gonna have the best way of extending our reach in a manner where it turns out to pay off for us in terms of our limited investment dollars for marketing. The other things that we do, we have tried to build on some of the sectors that we have here. We've tried to work with the colleges. Some of the college referrals that we've gotten they're good, but they're a lot earlier stage. You're more likely to find an entrepreneur or a researcher who's needing some financing to finalize some of their product development ideas or their research ideas, not as likely to say that they're looking for 10,000, 20,000 square feet of industrial space. We are partnered with Jefferson and Lewis counties and the Development Authority of the North Country and the Drum Country Business Initiative. Each of the IDAs in the counties we've provided $15,000 twice now in order to sustain the Drum Country Business Initiative. And I look at that as a way for us to supplement what we do in Canada. It's a marketing effort, more regionally based. It's to site selectors. They do mailings that go throughout the United States, not just in Canada like we tend to focus on. So I think it's a way of supplementing what we're already doing on the ground ourselves. And the process that I like to see, what works best for us is we have some kind of marketing activity, whether it's a letter or an advertisement or a trade show. We meet a prospect. The next step I like to see in the process is for us to go over and see their location. So if it's a company in Kingston or Ottawa or Montreal, we go over, we look at their location. That gives us an idea of what kind of fit we may have in the county for them. And if you go somewhere and somebody's in a gleaming glass state-of-the-art manufacturing facility, they're not going to want to be in a former dairy warehouse in the middle of a downtown somewhere. They're going to want to be in an industrial park. They're going to be in a nice building. They want that commonality, that cultural fit to what they're used to. Then the next step is we bring them over here and we show them the buildings here. We show them the buildings wherever we think there's a natural fit within the county. We try and get them in touch and to see what we have to offer. Then it's a long follow-up process of putting all those other things together that I talked about at the beginning, the financing, the buildings, the technical support, all toward trying to get them to want to set up here. Our interactions with the OBPA, I think of all of the development entities we deal with in St. Lawrence County, the Bridge and Port Authority is probably the most historically and continually committed to partnering with us on the marketing efforts. I think Wade and John have been, they are most likely to sign up for our events. We go to 14 trade shows. We provide a platform where we say to the developers of the county, we meet quarterly with the county developers, including the OBPA, to keep people focused and aware of what we're doing, and just to make sure we're not tripping over each other, whether it's in marketing or whether it's in county. And what we do is we pay for the space at the trade shows. We buy our way in, we buy the booth, we provide a platform, and then we say to the communities, anybody who wants to come work at the show with us is welcome to come. They pay their own freight, they pay their own overnight, their own meals, but we basically, other than that, we set them up. And I would say, John, you've probably been to, I don't know, half dozen events with us this year. I mean, if not more, and more than I've been to. So I'm not saying that you're not going to all of them. Certainly more than I've been to. We send a staff person, and it's good because one person working a 3-day trade show is excruciating. I mean, your throat gets dry. You're talking to people. You wind up, you're dead on your feet after a while. Having somebody else there so you can circulate, and you can sort of trade off each other, talk to one another, it makes a big difference. So over the years, at those kind of events, including the Ogdensburg. I think, John, you were the only non-Messina developer at the Messina event last week, as I recall. You know, that kind of, you gotta keep at it. You gotta keep, you know, the dedication of John's time and letting him do those kind of activities. It helps us, and I think it helps keep you guys in front of people. Throughout the follow-up process, when we go over to Canada, we tend to go together. I think usually sometimes we'll go by ourselves. Typically it's us and some other local developers. You try to manage the process so it's not a cartoonish attempt by communities to one-up each other, and we don't get much of that. You know, I think there's a sense out there, a misplaced sense, that there's this cutthroat competition between the communities and the development entities. And candidly, we don't see much of that. When, you know, if somebody is over, you know, somebody from Potsdam is at an event with us, and a company says, I really like to be on the border, they're gonna tell them about Ogdensburg, they're gonna tell them about Messina. And I think likewise, if these guys are at a meeting with us and a company says, boy, you know, I wanna be within 5 minutes of Clarkson University, these guys are gonna say, well then, you wanna talk to the IDA about buildings in Potsdam. And everybody wants the communities to locate within their neighborhood or within their location, but I don't think it becomes a barrier where people are competing with each other or are in any way poorly representing each of the communities within the county. So that's kind of the overview of what we try to do. Every year we look at different initiatives, you know, right now, you've got the Tenney Chamber that you've sent us information about. We're looking at nano biomass materials. There's every year some idea comes up or something where we look at it and we say, you know, Jesus, there's something unique about what's going on at Clarkson and with our wood resources and, you know, in any kind of cross-border context where we can do a limited mailing or a limited outreach, cold calling to a certain sector or a certain industry, and try and say, look, you know, you might not be aware, but there's this research going on at Clarkson, there's this building in Ogdensburg, and there's, you know, this raw material supply that we have. Try and put that in front of companies. Companies tend to expand when they're ready to expand. It's very difficult to approach a company who's not already looking at some kind of new location and say, geez, have you ever thought of setting up in the States? I mean, you're not going to push them into a decision that they're not already, for business reasons, naturally moving toward. Those special initiatives, you know, that we try to follow up with them. We try and find as many creative things to do as we can. There's limits, you know, it's time and resources. I have a staff of 8 people, myself included. So when we're allocating time to trade shows or to marketing at events or activities, it's always taking away from something else that we could be doing. So there's always that balancing act, which I'm sure you folks go through as well. But my sense right now is we have a better pipeline right now, I think, than we've probably had in 7 or 8 years as far as potential prospects. Whether they turn into actual companies, tenants, you know, owners of buildings, I don't know, but there are more of them that we're dealing with right now, certainly than in the last 5 years. And I think probably the busiest we were was 2002, 2003, 2003, back when you had Dew, you had Dew looking, you had T-Base, you had MedEng at the time, now Allen Vanguard. You know, there were those busier cycles, and you guys, I'm sure you see that with your occupancy rates. You know, when things get busy and buildings fill up, obviously that's what we're all looking for. And I'm hopeful that 2013 sees the delivery of some of these initial discussions that we started in 2012 in the form of new companies coming in.
Well, Pat, we're in a situation here, excuse me, where this committee is a part of the internal structure and transformational status that this board and our organization is taking. It's like taking a real initiative to make things change, whatever. We're not trying to say that we don't want to engage with other agencies within the county that do things, whatever, but we are looking at our internal structure and how we spend our time. we talk about, we have bean counters and, you know, run your organization, whatever, but
Yep.
looking at, and this is where Bruce comes in, whatever, is taking another investment of asking ourselves, what are we doing and how are we doing it? And going about, you know, looking at different ways to make change. I don't say we have North Country mentality, we're all North Country people, whatever, and Bruce is part of it, you know, the thinking outside of our area to look at different ways, whatever, and, we all want the same thing. We all want the same thing. We wanna make a change, we wanna create jobs up here, our whole country is in transformational status, this election may dictate some of those type of things coming up, what's gonna happen, so I really appreciate you coming today to get on, you know, to meet Bruce, to meet everybody, whatever, in a way that we can make change. I mean, everybody has dialogue. I mean, I've been to so many meetings, we have dialogue, and you say, what do we do? Well, we had dialogue, and it's like, how do we get from A to Z? You know, who's gonna take me from A to Z? We may have an idea, okay, and, you know, like things that you're doing with John, that's outstanding, you know, but how are we gonna get from A to Z? How is this county gonna make some changes? We talk about transportation, you know, how that plays in. We really feel here that this organization has a hub of the wheel here that can really make some things happen. We're right on the water, we got a railroad, we got an airport, we got all these things, I don't have to tell you that stuff, but it's like, we feel we can do more within this organization, with not just ourselves, we need a lot of help. We need a lot of help, and there's a huge responsibility on John. It's been a huge responsibility on John, and it's like we feel that we need to help John, we help this organization, whatever. Our board is really committed to this, you know, to make some real good changes here, and we're willing to make those investments. You know, like you said, $100,000 doesn't go very far, and we look at, we're gonna spend $100,000 already to, you know, to look at type of things that can make that economic impact on our system here, as well as the county, whatever. I mean, so that's why when you meet Bruce and, you know, listen to what Bruce has got to say, whatever, it may be something that, boom, we get jackpot.
Yep.
You know, maybe jackpot. You know, it's all it takes is one.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, the nice thing about this job and this location is you can make a measurable difference. Now, this isn't an area like New Jersey or New York City or even Rochester, where, you know, if you bring in a 20 or 30 person company, it's no event. I mean, here, when you see a company come in and 10,000 square feet is a lot of space for us. 10 jobs is a lot of jobs for us. We at the Messina event, the General Motors, the Racer Trust person had talked to some of the prospects on the way down on the bus, and we actually bussed people down from Montreal. We bussed them down from Ottawa, and when he got to the event, he said to me, "Oh, you know, the only problem is these guys are looking for smaller space, really." And I said, "Well, what size?" Because small to me is 800, you know, an office upstairs. He said, "No, you know, 20 to 30,000 square feet." Well, you know, let's not discourage them. That, you know, that happens to be our sweet spot, you know, and that's, and you can do a lot in 20,000. You can do a lot of good in a 20,000 square foot building.
And thank you so much for the information. Some of it I've heard, some of it is broader, and certainly filled a lot of areas in my mind. Now, in your experience, you know, you're saying you put stuff in front of the companies, and I would agree 100%. That company is not going to expand until they're ready to expand. So there must be marketing techniques that are based on what you do is you're trying to be there when that company is ready, so to speak.
Yep.
It's kind of like playing a little football game.
Yep.
Your strategies are.
Yep.
So when you're looking at this new market, say, or you're looking into a different market or the same market, you got to know, okay, when is the right time to put the message? Well, I want to kind of reverse that a second. Now, if I'm that company, how do I look for that message? What's your experience in that? You know, that you brought a group in from Montreal. Now, how did you kind of know this was the group that you bring in, or this is the message, or this is how I get the message to them?
A lot of it is, there are multiple channels of outreach that we do. Some of them are simple, old school, place an ad in the newspaper, just to try and get ground coverage in a market. And that market's typically Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto. I can't say, well, geez, let's try Cleveland this week, let's try, we don't market in New York State because of the anti-piracy provisions in the state laws about our programs and services, so it's gotta be outside of New York State. So we do some of that general, just basic, do an ad, do an internet piece on the, in the geographic markets. In order to raise the response rates and the profiles of some of our events, we've had to partner with better known entities than ourselves in putting the events together. I'll give you an example. The invitations for the Messina event came out from the U.S. Embassy. And here we are, we're 45 minutes from the embassy, with the closest border crossing to a foreign capital, closest city to a foreign capital. So we've developed a relationship with the embassy over the years, because if we invite people to a seminar at a hotel in Ottawa, we might get a half dozen responses. If the embassy invites them to a seminar in their main hall up at the embassy, we'll get 40. And does that mean there's 34 who aren't interested? I don't think so. I think it's a matter of, marketing as a county is difficult. When you cross over into Canada, you cross into Prescott, you don't think of the county you go to. When people cross here, they cross in Ogdensburg or Messina or New York State, they don't think of St. Lawrence County. We're kind of at an unknown layer of government. So promoting our message with our name sometimes is a challenge, because it doesn't mean anything to people. So for an event like that, you partner with the embassy. When you get a letter from the ambassador, it has a different feel to it. It looks, it gives a weight and a substance to the events that the nicest letter I write still couldn't convey. So that's one way that we do it. We say, we use their mailing list. They have contacts, they have companies who've contacted them over the years with looking for information about the U.S. market. And then in the Ogdensburg event, we did the same thing with the Ontario Trade Ministry. So you partly get a better response and a better list by dealing with higher powers or higher partners with a higher profile than what we have ourselves. The other thing, one of the things as far as how you find companies where they are in that cycle, timing wise, we read the Ottawa papers online, we read the Montreal papers, we follow business in Canada in general. And if you see about a sector or a company that's expanding, we try and hit them right there. We do a cold call, we do a letter, we do a packet. If we read that a company in Sandbats, back when Sandbats had the big stories about Bobby Bonds Bobby Bonds using their bats. It's an Ottawa company making maple bats. They have a location at Marlene's office right now. But we went after them at that time because we said, okay, look at this as a company that's growing, they've got some profile, we can follow up and say, hey, we saw this. We've been doing that for years. And that's, you try and, you can't do that all the time, but when you see a specific company in a specific instance that appears to be in that growth cycle, you try and hit them. Same thing with the trade shows we choose. We try, we have low cost power right now, so we're going after the plastics industry. We're looking at chemicals. We're looking at those industries where what we have to offer ties in with what they, at least in theory, should be looking for, and then you try and find ones that are in a growth cycle for the obvious reasons. We don't have a secret formula for doing it repetitively, I'll put it to you that way. So a lot of it you're kind of relying on the vagaries of timing.
If I can jump in, since I am a site selector.
Sure.
He's right, in many regards. One of the ways you normally have to do this is you look at sectors that are growing, and then look for leading companies, and then do a mass mailing, or however approach, media, whatever media that you choose. And then you gotta get out there and see them, and usually you have to host events in places that those companies are concentrated in. So if you have to be in, now you say there's anti-piracy, you can't come down to Manhattan and do something? You don't want to, but you could.
We can't use the IDA incentives to incentivize a company to move from one part of the state to the other.
Okay, but you're talking about global international companies
Right.
based in New York.
Yep.
And so, and this is germane a little bit of why I'm here. When you're talking about only looking at Canadian companies here, we're also looking at the reverse, like how do United States companies serve the Canadian market more efficiently from here or anywhere in St. Lawrence? So it has to be back and forth a little bit. But companies don't announce, there's no vice president in charge of site selection, no vice president in charge of expansion. It's a tough thing. You have to, if you have the advertising budget to be in Area Development Magazine or Global Expansion or somebody like that, you're going to eat up that 100,000 pretty quickly.
Yep.
So all these companies, all these communities around the country, they're always struggling with their advertising budgets, and they're wasting a lot of time and energy. Again, it is, my experience is telling me that most of the corporations I've talked to, nobody's doing much of anything. I mean, there's a whole lot of shopping right now. Nothing until the election, no one's going to do anything. 2013 is 2014 by the time decisions are really committed. So I don't expect any 2013 major changes at all. 2014 looks like a better cycle. We, in our office in New Jersey, we are constantly visited by IDAs, IDCs, people from all over the country, always coming to the New York area, and a lot of location consultants are based in New Jersey for some strange reason. So it's easy for them to come to New York and then within driving distance get around. It's so hard to get people here. So if you have to sponsor a fly-in event, if you have the money, to bring some top executives in a sector, you can't do it for everywhere, but say you pick one sector, you're going to say you're going to do something in agribusiness or something, and you get Conagra and you get some of the other big leaders here, and say, okay, let's have an event here in St. Lawrence County of some kind on a particular topic, on a particular reason. And you can mix it with a golf event or however it is that you need to do, but you got to get a bunch of people here. And that's hard to do, and it takes months of planning, and you can't announce it for next week. It's got to be a year, 6 months out and everything else, but you do need to have a special event here. You can go see as many people as you want, but you'll exhaust your time and energy long before you can be effective. Right now, what you need to do is have an executives retreat here somehow, and you're going to have to charter some airplanes to get them. That's my 2 cents at the moment. The games have changed a lot. There are 3,500 counties out there, trying the same thing as you're trying to do. It's tough.
Yep.
No question.
I'm going to kind of phrase my question a little bit differently, because the answers you just gave or the information you just gave expands my whole base of knowledge. But I guess strategically, if I'm one of the people in a major company that's looking to expand, let's say I want to put myself in their seat, that has the inkling that I might expand down the road. What type of informational systems do I use? Do I turn my computer to the point that it's going to shut off all the advertisements? Do I look for that in the newspaper? Do I do it by word of the ear? What do most of those companies that end up expanding, through what informational systems are they getting?
There's a pretty good study recently done about this. Major corporations, there's about 40% use site selectors, or even less, 30%. The internet, everybody's access to searches, so everybody's searching all the time. The internet is still the #1. It was print ad, but now has well surpassed print advertisement. You can't skip print advertisement. You got to combine it with two. But there's going to be young executives in every company at all different sizes of companies, from a 10-person CEO to some grad student working in some global office somewhere. And they're going to be searching for, because their boss is going to say, find me a less expensive or a growth location or an untapped location where my competition is not located. So they're going to use those kind of parameters as much as they can. So an Ogdensburg or a St. Lawrence County, unless the search engine is looking for it, unless you have something that it's going to trigger, is never going to come up in any way. Now, I'm going to plead some ignorance. Until I got involved with this project, I didn't know much about this area. I know a lot about it now, but I didn't know much about this area. You have your marketing strength is your unique location vis-a-vis the 4 major Canadian cities. If you could figure out some way to get your airline and your airport larger so that you could fly in and out of here from business capitals in the United States, get people here to say, I can serve Toronto, Montreal, Quebec, and Ottawa from here more effectively than any other location in the United States. And here are the marketing, here are the product lines that I want to get to those Canadian consumers. And on the other hand, any of those people in those locations say, I could come down here and consolidate operations in Ogdensburg and get to the back to the U.S. market faster through rail, or possibly through water. Then you've got some international cohesiveness that makes some sense here. Then there's only 30% of the American business world has anything to do with that. The rest of it you wouldn't care about. You wouldn't care if you're selling some product somewhere that doesn't ever have to go north or south or be moved by air, water, or sea. Financial services, for example, or something like that, or American law, or whatever it is. So there are industries, obviously, that you have to sort of whinny out immediately. But at a certain point, you say, okay, I have information that I can post that can be searchable throughout somehow computer network or some kind of research capability that says this place, and you have to stack it against similar places like Plattsburgh and other places like that, Messina, and say Ogdensburg, St. Lawrence County has a better opportunity to do this, whatever this is, moving these cranes and these wind turbine things around, more effectively than any of the other places. But you have to prove it. So it's got to say, this is the bottom line. There's a better savings or better growth opportunity in St. Lawrence County than there would be in Clinton County or Jefferson, if you're going to just look north. And if you're going to be looking outside of New York State, then you're going to have to arrange it as we did initially. We look at Vermont. We may look at some areas in farther Midwest or close Midwestern locations around the Great Lakes. But realistically, you got to get this place on the map physically, because no one has ever really heard of Ogdensburg, and very few people have heard of St. Lawrence County outside this North Country vicinity. And it's hard to get that message out there. But you can do it if you can say we are the best in a couple of things. The agribusiness, the nature of your natural resources to promote, and all the things that relate to that is an easy one. So you got to get that message out. And it's the coordination between all your agencies somehow. It's tough. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. I'm just telling you from the outside.
A lot of national and international companies that are looking to expand will also go to the individual state clearinghouses and go through like an Empire State Development and say, here's my proposal, what can you do for me? Give me some sites, give me an incentive package. So we will see prospects coming through Empire State Development, and we do make proposals, site-specific proposals on land and buildings on a fairly regular basis, and those have declined over the past 4 or 5 years, but they're starting. We've seen a couple lately, but that's the other route I think that most companies take.
We have and there's two different markets. There's the markets within our reach, which I would say from Montreal to Toronto, and then there's everything else. And with the markets within our reach, the continual efforts to stay in front of them tend to be what catches in their mind. My hope is somebody at Ogdensburg or Messina last week, when they see us or John or somebody at a trade show, it triggers something. Then when we send them a letter, it gives us there's a certain legitimacy and reality to us as a business location for them. The other thing is they know who we are. They cross here. There's a lot of people who cross here. They come over here. They shop here. They go to hockey games. And the thought of, hey, I could set up a location here, isn't jumping out at them. We try to paint that part of the picture for them. The outside, the non within reach, we've tried to look at the things that we offer that are something that connects us to the outside world. So we've done alumni mailings with the colleges. We've tried to market through their outreach because there's business people who went to Clarkson or St. Lawrence, for that matter, anywhere, all over the country, all over the world. So we've tried to utilize that familiarity and that whatever goodwill they have in their mind toward toward this area and the familiarity to get them to say, oh, geez, you know, never thought about setting up a location there. Probably is cheaper than other places. That kind of thing. And then a little bit to what you're saying. The other thing is there are almost an infinite number of sub-industry sectors that you could target. What we've tried to do is find the ones where we have something really that does set us apart, and then try to outreach, and whether it's by bringing people here, or whether it's by, you know, trying to take the message to them, you know, because there's a very heavy lift to get somebody to say, oh, Ogdensburg, of course. You know, why wouldn't anybody in Chicago want to set up in Ogdensburg? And that's, you know, those that we can't reach, that market, we've always had a harder time getting to them. That's why we're trying to hedge our bets with the Fort Drum stuff, because both as a region that's a little bigger, maybe a little better known, and also because they're focusing on site selectors, and they're focusing a lot in New
They have the
Jersey
money.
and that area, and the notoriety. People have heard of Fort Drum. If there's a military connection, there's a lot that we can sell. Same message of ours, put in a little different format, packaged a little differently, but
You get to look at the historical success and growth as well, and that most of that has been with Canadian companies. When you talk about Mitel locating here 25 years ago, and you talk about Breckenridge and Med-Eng and Duke and Bata Shoes and International Security Printers, they're all Canadian companies. That's where all the success has been. That's where all the growth is. I mean, that's our fit versus you know, what U.S. national company has located in St. Lawrence County is located in northern New York State over the past 30 years. Not to say it can't be done, but you know, you focus your resources.
and there's another little subtext here. There's reaching out. We tend to get, I'll broadly base it, 3 types of respondents. Those who are just interested in talking and learning more. You could tell at the events that we have people who are just looking to spend a day doing something different. You know, and if that meant driving on a bus to Messina for a free lunch, that was cool. They were nice people, but you know, then there's the business people who say, I want to expand, but I don't have any money, I don't have any resources, and we get most of our respondents fall in that category, whether it's locally or whether it's from outside the area, where they say, you know, and we've dealt with, you know, dozens and dozens of these people who have great ideas. This is what they want, but they don't have a nickel to their name, and that's a gap I can't fill. That final category are the legitimate, for lack of a better term, the companies with the resources to actually pull off an expansion. That is a very, very small group, and we spend a lot of time with the first 2 in order to try and find that third group. Once you find them, then you got to convince them. You know they're good for us. We got to convince them that we're good for them, and that becomes a challenge just because there's so few of them. And when we get them, that's, you know, when you can tell that's why I like to go visit these companies where they are, because when you walked into Med-Eng's office, you looked at it and you said, wow, you know, these guys, they can pay their rent, they can buy a building, they can pay the employees. This isn't somebody in a garage who's got a great idea. And that's a very, very, very small portion of who we wind up seeing, and it takes a lot of time to get to them. And then that's when the real wooing and selling process starts. And that's true whether it's in Canada or whether it's somebody who went to Clarkson. There's plenty of people who went to Clarkson who have, you know, strong, impressive companies that could set up operations here, but there's also plenty who are, you know, not quite there in their business career and who are looking for other people's money to sort of launch them, and that high risk that gets hard for us to do with public funding.
And I would just add a little extra context to that. We typically aren't dealing with the folks that have $1 in a dream. We're dealing with somebody who has 50 cents, is looking to get that 50 cents from somewhere else in the dream.
Yeah.
And as you point out, it takes a long time to whittle it down to that subgroup.
Sam and Wade have to leave, so we should probably go to Bruce's presentation at this.
I wanted to ask you a question on that. Do you want me to see if I can reschedule the city meeting?
I think you need to.
I really would prefer that we're here. I know that'll send an initial
Yeah, I knew when you made
shot
that
across
thing,
the south,
maybe
the
they
bottom
wanna-
of the city,
yeah.
but
That'd be
I
fine.
think we need to be here for this.
Yeah,
I'll go make the call to Jeff.
okay. Well, maybe later he can see
Yes.
us, whatever, you can do that
Um,
too. Do what your day is.
I'll see.
Well, you do what you need to do.
I wanted to
We
meet
don't
with last week.
Sorry, we don't have to talk to me just right now, we still have this conversation.
Need to
The
discuss.
interesting thing about, how many agencies are there like, I mean, there's the IDA, there's this one. Who else is competing for the same audience?
Within the county,
Yeah.
within the county, you have, we are the, I would say we are the only countywide economic development. Within the communities, you've got Potsdam that has a development office, Messina has a development corporation, Canton has one that's more focused on downtown business improvement, that.
But are they going across the river to talk to companies, or just
No.
you? And these guys?
Typically, it's us, the OBPA, Messina, on the border, show some, and they participate with some
Yeah.
of our events.
Because if the message gets diluted, it's a problem.
Sure, you know, in a perfect world, we'd have one conveyor of the message, and everybody
Yeah.
would trust us, and we'd say,
Yeah.
you know, you don't need to come to this, once we pre-qual them, we'll bring them to you, but,
Yeah.
you know, you can't,
Well, it's this idea of regionalism.
no,
Everybody thinks they're participating in regionalism, but
one of the things I'll say though is, back when things were humming along, and we were doing a lot more of this, John, Joe Tracy, you know, back in the day, and we would go with Doug Schelling, or these are just names, people from New York State. And when we'd go there, and there'd be 3 or 4 of us, rather than looking like, and we were pretty good, I think, at interacting with one another. You do it enough, and you learn, you know, people's lines and what not to trip over. But when we were showing up at a company with 3 or 4 people, they were saying, wow, you know, it would take me 8 months to get these different levels of Canadian government together to come see me.
yeah,
You guys
exactly
must
right.
really be interested, you must be serious.
Right.
And we were, and we are. You know, the
Okay.
message obviously works better when they got 50 employees than when you got 3 people. And I mean, I remember one time we went to a canvas maker, you know Joe Tracy, and there was a guy and his wife and their son in the shop, and there's this big room behind us where they make this stuff. And Joe says, how many people do you have manufacturing? And the guy says, well, in the summer when it's really busy, all 3 of us will go back there.
Yeah.
Joe was about out the door at that point. And that, you know, you don't know that till you go there. That's
Yeah.
the other part of having boots on the ground, and you can see and you know.
We've been complimented a number of times by the companies that we interact with on our collaboration and working together jointly. That's one of our selling points. The state, unfortunately, because of lack of resources since 2007 or so, they've eliminated the office in Toronto, they've eliminated the office in Montreal, and they've reduced staff in the North Country to the point where they don't participate like
Cut
they
their
used to.
travel budget.
And they eliminated the programs that were very popular, like the Empire Zone program and incentive proposals.
Yeah.
So it makes it even more difficult.
And yet they're build down New York, and New York's open for business campaigns, all that stuff.
Campaign says one thing, but
Yeah.
actions are different.
Yeah.
We've tried to use the pullback from Montreal and Toronto to our advantage. We tried to fill that gap to an extent.
Yeah.
And if someone's got a question about doing business in New York, we try to get them to
You're the first,
call
you're
us.
the first
we'll tell
entry
you.
in the United States right here
Yeah.
for most people.
Yep.
Except for Plattsburgh, that's the other.
And they're very, very good at what they do in Plattsburgh. They've got a direct line to Montreal. It's a difficult battle for us pulling somebody from
Yeah.
anywhere but the western fringe of Montreal, just
Yeah.
because of the interstate system.
You go and meet with those companies in Montreal, and a lot of times they'll say, well, Plattsburgh's right here, you know, that's really where I'm interested in that corridor
Mhm.
when we sell.
60 miles.
But we have had Montreal companies here, as long as they're up in Hull or,
Yep.
like Patrick
There's a
said,
couple in
on
the
the
scenery
western
now.
fringe of, well, one of them's working in Marlene's and Tomar's operation right now. He's been here before, and he's using her services now, manufacturing, so.
And that's part of what we've tried, a little bit like you're saying, you know, positioning us as serving the Canadian market. We've
Yeah.
also, rather than focusing solely on bringing companies down here,
Right.
we've tried to find ways to partner the existing companies with the need that potential firms might have.
Yeah.
Meaning, rather than making something themselves, if they can contract with Anson or with somebody
Sure.
here,
Yeah.
and they're gonna add 10 people to do their production, then that's,
Well, if they locate here, they locate in the Commerce Park, and if they're doing a value added somehow, and they work through FTZ, it's a natural for them. Ship it right back out, and there's no duty on it. But I think that it's, you know, again, we're waiting for this recession to get somewhere. get us back to where we were. All the marketing analysis that I do all the time, economic development analysis, just get us back to 2006. That's all anybody's trying to do. We have these kinds of things, and I don't know if you have a chance to look at any of that. There'll be another one coming out shortly, but to do an industry prospectus for an area, it's obviously biased. There's no way around it. But you do it in such a way that you kind of show your competition in fairly good light and show why you are at least on a level playing field with your competition, or you're better, cheaper, more effective somehow. But it comes down to getting something in an industry level, and we've done hundreds and hundreds of these things over the years, and they're effective. The idea is to get some kind of sector-specific report that shows your area, but doesn't necessarily lead with your area. That's why I'm uncomfortable sometimes about putting the name of the community right on the front page. I'd rather it be discussed somewhere in the report, but right now we'll use this for this kind of approach. But to get something from your area to the C-level or decision makers in major companies that says, okay, this is the language that I'm expecting to read. This is what I want. It's dollars and cents. It's maybe growth, and maybe the other things. Every place it's a nice place to live, work, and play, but no one has the time to go through a lot of these things. So when you do have someone's attention, you do have to say why your company can flourish in this area, wherever this area is, and especially here, and what are the drawbacks to doing this. Now, one of the things we talked about on the original report here was why does Messina do better in some ways than Ogdensburg would, even though it's in the same county? And they have a power advantage, electric power advantage, generating power advantage, and we don't have here. We have a wonderful bridge here that looks to me like if we put some underwater turbines on the pylons, we could generate some cheap power. Maybe, maybe not. It's going to have to be experimented on. But if you had something like a lock or something like that, and you have free hydroelectric power, then you've got it all. You've got everything you need. You've got cheap energy. We don't have cheap energy in New York State, and every company that you talk to, maybe the Canadians think it's cheap compared to their energy, but they have problems too. We have those kinds of insurmountable issues that unless you're going to do things like give away free land, which is a good question, you're not going to get the ear of a lot of companies, regardless of what you're trying to do, if the cost is too high. I think the Canadian companies look at us and said, okay, it is cheaper, obviously, to put it here. But we need to say, why would certain companies still maintain an operation in New York and not go to the Carolinas or something? And that's a hard advantage, and you're going to have to incentivize these decisions pretty quickly with budgets you may or may not have. We're not always finding that companies are taking the incentives. A lot of times they're not. They don't want to be on the hook. They may be saying the wrong kinds of things. So you have to say, okay, I've got labor force, I'll train for labor force, I'll go the directions you want me to do, but you have to give me a certain commitment that you're going to be here for 10 years or 5 years or whatever time level they can push, or 30 years if they can. I'm not posting any solutions here. We're just talking in general. But it seems that if you don't promote your advantages over your competitors in such a strong way, you have no shot at getting anywhere. The Canadians cannot be your only market. There has to be America or other foreign companies from Europe and other places that would consider this location because of its special character. But you get away from this port, you get away from this bridge, and you get deeper into the county. Other than farming and mining, you don't have an awful lot to offer to a lot of companies. They're not going to put up major manufacturing operations in the middle of nowhere where it costs a fortune to bring in roads and power and everything else. They're just not going to do it. There's not enough money in anybody's budget for that. Well, that's not such a pleasant thing to say.
Well, you're starting my week.
Truth.
Sounded like my
You
time.
want to hear the truth from here.
Nothing wrong with some straight talk.
Bruce, can you go into the details of the Greek yogurt perspective?
Yeah,
And
let's-
Patrick, I think, probably needs to run here eventually, and this is something we've already talked about collaborating on in terms
Okay.
of marketing, so.
Well, I knew this was coming because right after I read about this summit, the yogurt summit, almost yogurt summit, I have a funny feeling that, Patrick, I don't know if you know who we are. Okay, and did you see our other report? Okay. So, you know, this is a natural add-on to the agribusiness, or sort of the sort of promotional idea of a product being manufactured locally here. We have a lot of great opportunity to get this product line going in this area, only because the fuel costs of transporting 1.5 billion gallons of milk a year has got to be prohibitive to anybody. Now, in the report, and Wade picked it up right away, Chobani has won a huge court case in Canada to sell American Greek yogurt in Canada. They have an import quota, but that will be lifted shortly. It'll be Canadian-wide. So Chobani, who is the #1 player in New Berlin area, while they are still operating strongly here, will be building, and they'll operate a new plant in Idaho shortly. And the capability of the Greek yogurt business is still strong for this area. I can't imagine that it will go on indefinitely while the competitive areas in the United States dairy world sort of catch wind of this and say, why aren't we doing this and stealing this business from New York State? New York State has about another 15% growth the forecast at this point, another 90-some thousand cows that have to be sort of added to the whole stock. Greek yogurt takes about a little bit more than 4 gallons of milk to produce pounds of milk to produce 1 pound, or 4 units of milk to produce 1 unit of this Greek yogurt. That's a lot of milk. Our dairy farms in this area were 3rd in New York State in milk production, which is the key to this industry. So why is St. Lawrence, specifically, why is Ogdensburg good for this industry? It has to be from the idea that we have a very large production of fluid milk production locally, that we have available acreage as the largest and one of the least developed counties in New York State. We have capability to enhance a market direction which is decidedly going north with this product line, and that we also have the opportunity possibly to give away free land. That's the hard nut to swallow. But if there are enough jobs created, then that's your hook. That you're going to beat everybody's land costs by giving it away, and you can put this together in pro forma, and it can make some sense. In a large, let's just look very quickly at.
Is that enough to entice Bruce?
Yes, it is. Sure, it is. It's enough to get you in front of the key players to see if it makes some sense. You don't lead with that, Sam. You can't because then every other place around here is going to say, well, wait a minute, how could you do this for this one industry, and then we're going to turn around and you're not doing it for any of the other industries that you support.
It's a one-time cost, though. It's not anything that's
Yeah.
going to make or break
No,
their
it's an
decision to be here.
incentivized cost. Incentives are always about the middle of the conversation and wind up being at the very end somewhere. They never lead in this. The company is going to say, why should I consider this area? And if you looked at in this quickly report, let me see, the map is on page, turn to page 6. These are where the 39 yogurt producers, and they're not all obviously Greek yogurt producers, but the 39 yogurt producers in New York State are located. And you can see that they're centrally located in the interstate corridors with the real paucity of any kind of northern exposure at all, including, let's say, Plattsburgh. So we do have sort of the Adirondack Mountain kind of problem and sort of separate geographic separations between a lot of our producing area and, let's say, the consuming area. And it's about to get from here down to New York, it's a 7-hour drive, but that's enough. That's within 1 day transport capability of a trucker, so that's really not an issue. What we really need to say is that we are an untapped market area for this producing capability. If these concentrated counties along the Beltway down in here and along the Thruway and the central and southwestern area are landlocked in the sense that they can't grow by the amount of dairy herd production that we could, or the industrial capability that we could here, we have everything that we need to grow this area. The problem is that milk production in the New York State area for this industry is limited kind of by some very strict regulations. We kind of have dairies around 200 cows generally in this area. There's a thing called CAFO, which is the care of feeding of animals regulation. It's the United States regulation from the USDA, which comes down to the state as well. And for a little while, any dairy that had more than 200 cows had to go through an awful lot of development costs for the next level of feeding and caring for the animals and everything else. That is now going to be raised to 300 under the direct results of this summit, which follows the national regulation. New York State was a little bit more restrictive, and the 200 cow. So let's say a third production level of dairy growth. Now, while we have some very large dairies, we've got tons of these small guys around here with farms who are raising cows and who are transporting milk, and they're not terribly efficient with the milking of cows compared to other locations and the amount of delivery that actually comes out of the stock. But if that could be increased by some way, and we increased our herd production, we would lead New York State in milk production. If that's true, and we could support a production facility of about 100 to 130 people around here to serve this national market and international market, there's no reason in the world we couldn't attract a Greek yogurt manufacturer to Ogdensburg fairly quickly. So this is why producing a report like this is important, the timing is important. I know one of the things I wanted to look at, and I didn't have really an opportunity because there's really no research here. I can't tell exactly where the dairies are selling their milk. I'd have to survey all the local guys and find out, for this budget we can't do that. Where are they all going? I assume that a lot of it's going to Chobani, a lot of it will be going to Fahey and to what will be PepsiCo's plant in Alpena. When those things are up and running, the consumption of the amount of milk that's produced locally will be impressed. It will be somewhat difficult to get a lot more unless these local farmers around here start increasing their production. At the level we are right now, we are the third largest producer in the state. So that's important for that production capability. We have the one New York State cooperative up here that produces yogurt, but that area could grow. It's in the Messina area somewhere. No, I'm sorry, it's outside the county. It's outside the county. It's on the county line. And so we have the capability of attracting somebody here fairly quickly. So we have about 50 companies that we have around the nation and also a couple outside that we're going to try to circulate this report to. Now, the IDA would love to have your blessing, I assume. I mean, the OBPA would love probably to have your look through here to make sense of it. But a company that produces this amount of product would have normally about a 5.5% operating profit. We can beat that to about almost 6% if, let's say, we discount our land capability, we have a lower construction cost, lower wage rates. So we say if you locate it in Genesee or Wyoming or some of the other locations that are very active at the moment, we can compete fairly with those areas, or we can save you money and give you the capability. If you're thinking about exporting this to Canada, if this product looks like it's going to go in that direction, then you can do from here from no other location. And that's also germane to the other conversation, what would be an international headquarters and international business logistics.
Would they want to build from scratch?
Sure.
Or
but you don't have what Chobani has, so you can buy a craft plant.
What's the Uvalde plant doing? Anything? What are they doing over in Uvalde?
Lucerto,
Yeah.
they're making mozzarella.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, okay, well,
You
what
don't have
did the guy do from Chobani? He bought the craft plant, which originally was a cheese plant, which converted to yogurt.
Yeah.
So yes, you could, if you have the capability, if the silos are big enough, we can always put up more silos. If you have the road network to get the trucks in and out of here, we're talking about an awful lot of milk that has to be produced for a sizable plant of this. And these are, let me go back how we got this. We looked at 3 major plants in the area, and we averaged them. So we looked at Fahey, we looked at what will be the PepsiCo plant, we looked at whatever that other, the third manufacturer was. It's listed here. We kind of averaged them and say, all right, what would a new operation entail? Yeah, Alpena Food. And they were the smallest of the 3. We did not look at Chobani because some of that data is not available. But we looked at those 3 plants and said, okay, what is their output? What's the amount of milk input? what is it looks like their employee census, what are the investments that have been published, and we did a lot of averaging to come up with this 400 million net sales, and probably about 500 million net sales, but gross sales, but then we don't assume there'd be a fair amount of returns or discounts and everything else. So we knew about the size of the facility, we knew about what it would cost, and if you're going to spend 100 million bucks, you're going to not care about whether you're buying an old plant. You're going to tear it down anyway. You're just looking for the land and the location.
That's what you want, okay.
Chobani kept what they could, but they expanded a hell of a lot of that craft plant. And this guy's making an absolute fortune right now. He's very lucky. The big thing is, where are Greek yogurts as a product line going? Are they going to go to frozen? For example, we haven't seen a lot of frozen Greek yogurt dessert area. If it's going to dessert, if that is the next push for this thing, then we've got the capability of saying we could ship frozen product by rail out of here. That could be done. But certainly by truck, it's going to the American product line. It's going to be on 4 wheels. But if something was frozen warehouse development capability, fresh refrigerated warehouse around here is still probably necessary to do. We don't have the road network that a Watertown or some of the other locations on the highway have. It's an hour to 81 from here. That is going to be a drawback for anybody who is seriously looking at this and saying, okay, even though I could be in one of these other counties, I'm 30 minutes, 20 minutes to the interstate, and I need to be where I am. We can't solve that easily unless we can say we can do something through rail. One of the big things about this, which is going to be a side business, and I talked to John a little bit about it, and I think that's something that you need to consider, is that there is so much acid dry whey that comes off of the yogurt production, and nowhere to put it, that there is a capability, and there's a big Chinese export market. This is a great food additive, a great fertilizer. You could dry it, pallet it, put it on a ship and get it out of here, and you can make a wonderful product line for export. The other issue that Chobani and some of the other guys have is that they don't know what to do with their water. Again, 1.5 million pounds of milk a year, 1.5 billion sometimes. I mean, you're talking about gigantic numbers of volume. There is so much treated water that needs treating. It's really not that difficult to make releasable fresh water from this, but you can't put it anywhere. Chobani is now restricted. They cannot go in the Chenango River anymore with their water output. So they're going to have to figure out what to do with their water. We have treated water capability right here with unlimited water resources. That's another benefit of being in Ogdensburg or Messina as opposed to any other location in the county. But I like it here because I think we've got the capability of doing an awful lot right here. If we have the opportunity to sell this stuff directly across the river to the Canadian market, which the new law says we can, this is an excellent opportunity. We may also say to the 5 major producers of this product in Canada, make it here and bring it back. Milk prices are almost 80% higher in Quebec than they are here. They are controlled by the Canadian market, the government. So if we could study this a little bit more, and the only way to do it is to get in front of these, let's say the 5 big Greek producers, and Danone is one of the big ones, Parmalat, and say, look, we have the capability for you to come across here, use our milk, use some of our product, joint venture with an American manufacturer if you need to, and ship it right back. We could do it here.
So how's our process of doing that? What's our sales pitch? Who does what? How's that go about?
Well, that's a good question, and I think these guys have to help you with that answer. I love the idea of going to the United States Embassy. Well, that's a great idea. If let's say we get we'll easily get the research done for the five CEOs of those companies, or at least some of the top marketing people, and let's circulate this report. It does not say in any way that you should come across the border and produce these products here, but the idea is to have the quick conversation with them and say, look, we have land, we've got all the resources that are necessary for this thing. You may or may not want Chobani to continue to sell product in Canada that's produced in the United States. You may say, I want a Canadian company to produce product, if we have to, in the United States, and sell it back to the Canadian market. Now, I don't know what kind of wrinkle that's going to raise with the Canadian government. But again, if it's a joint venture capability, then you'd have 5 companies to go see. That's not so hard. They're going to be in Montreal, they're going to be in Ottawa, they're going to be somewhere. So those are the 5 major companies that you begin to see. Danone is from France. I mean, they're going to be, or Parmalat's originally from France, and they're going to be going back to some of their folks back home. We'll talk to PepsiCo. We'll talk to Fahe, and see what they're thinking. They're in not that far away from here right now, but they may say a satellite operation makes some sense to us. We also have tons of people in this industry that do not produce Greek yogurt. Again, the idea of Greek yogurt is much more in demand in the American marketplace. It is a $6 billion industry. It is growing almost double every year. I don't know how much longer it will continue, but if you've used it, if you've eaten it, it's a great product.
It is.
I think it's going to be put into many more foods. There'll be more cereals. There'll be lots of other uses for the product. And I think that as long as New York State rides this wave, we have an advantage. But don't forget, in the United States, we have lots and lots of dairy operations and lots of dairy capability and lots of logistical and distribution capability. New York State on average has 200 cow farms. Idaho has 7,000 cow farms.
What's the
And that's why Chobani's going to Idaho.
What's the nature of your engagement with the OBPA? Could you bring the message to the companies?
Yeah,
I mean, much like you don't put your name on the outside of it, you know, if a third party says, hey, you know, have you thought about, there's a diamond in the rough up there that you might not be aware of?
we have worked for many communities around the country where, and we do it to this day, we are engaged to bring this message to as many executives as there are in the industry. So the idea is to go out and do the research and get every name of every major yogurt manufacturer. I don't care if they make Greek yogurt. And say, have you thought about Greek yogurt here in New York State? Get also the plus from Cuomo's office and say, this is where New York State is headed. And also, if you're making Greek yogurt, have you thought about being closer to a major production of milk or milk distribution, so that the cost of moving milk, which is ultimately comes down to the price in the yogurt somewhere, is reduced. So yes, the answer is any of these things that we do, we bring these to the executives. If I have to go travel, I will, but I can't go see 90 executives. It doesn't make sense. But the idea is to get in front of 15 of them in New York if I have to, because for me it's easy. For you guys, it's not so easy to get down to Manhattan. But if they happen to be in Chicago, then you send you guys send a trade mission to Chicago to go do this. But they're not. They're the food marketing folks are based in New York. So this is where they are. You're in the right marketplace. This is why this product is produced here in New York State, because the food companies are basically here. So I think the idea is to get these reports, and I think this has to be vetted among all you guys. You've got to read it carefully. I didn't have enough information to say, the one thing I haven't said in this is that the St. Lawrence dairy guys are moving all this product to the following plants. I don't know. And I'd have to survey all the local farmers, the dairy farmers, and I don't have time to do that in 6 weeks. I don't know if it's all that necessary to do. Somehow you know that the milk that's being produced here is being trucked south to the manufacturers somehow.
It's through the cooperatives.
Yeah, so let's get it here. And that was the thrust of the earlier report. Let's get a food line, a product line, that's a cooperatively based product line here. Just like Ocean Spray produces is a cooperatively owned cranberry company. We could be St. Lawrence yogurt, St. Lawrence Greek yogurt. Why not? Create a company. So those things can be done, but again, when we talked about these in the last go-around, it was a whole plethora of industries that we're talking about. Now we have a couple of product lines that I'd love to be able to concentrate on, and I think you can do that. I don't know how long this wave can be ridden. You've got a window of a year, a couple of years, and then this product line, I think, is going to spread out across the country. I don't see why New York State would own it. I really don't.